this is Counter Steer, and this is my way to tune. I watched a lot of other tuning guides when the game first came out. I'm an old Gran Turismo player, and their guides haven't done much for me. A lot of them try to apply real-world physics to the game, and it doesn't apply. So I'm just gonna try and give you an abridged version of how I do my tunes, and we'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. Do your gears first. If you don't know how to do it, I did a video with it. You can find it. And do your gears. Get that out the way. Even if your car drives horrible, just get your traction down. Once you have your traction down, the rest of this becomes a lot more simpler. We're going to do body height. Not all cars like to be low, but bottom out your car. Take it for a couple corners. I recommend trial mountain. The first three corners are very telling. You got elevation changes. You got three corners back to back, and then you got a high speed corner, the fourth corner going into the tunnel. Very good place to test your tunes, at least to get it started. Drop your height all the way down. See how the car feels. Start bringing this up in increments of 10. Keep it even. Even if your car's lowest is not even, just set it even. Then do increments of 10. Keep raising these by 10 until the car is decent. Now, what this actually translates to is this is how responsive the car is. What this setting, basically how responsive the car is to your steering inputs. Lower settings, faster inputs. Higher settings, slower, more dull inputs. So having the car all the way slammed is not always the best. Sometimes your tire hits the fender, your steering locks, stuff like that, even on braking. So do this in increments of 10 until you find a good spot. Front really is all about steering response. Rear is more so on corner exit. Keeping it even, the rear will pivot in conjunction with the front. But if you find out on corner exit your car's kind of, kicking out a little sideways or you're spinning out, start jacking this up by 10 more points and keep trying it out until you find a manageable position. I mean, the goal is to keep this as low but as manageable as possible. You're eventually going to hit a point where your ride height is you're understeering going into corners that you went too far at that point. It's not uncommon for my tunes to see something like 125 on the front, 150 on the rear, because I'm heavy on the throttle and I need the car to keep going straight after I come out of a corner, whether my tires are spinning or not. Higher rear settings will do that. Don't necessarily always go by the bar or the numbers. You just do it in increments of 10, because you'll look at something like this and think, oh my goodness, this car's too high up, but that's not the case. As soon as you buy the custom suspension for this 45 is way too low. And if you look at it, I'm still almost touching the fender. This is the lowest I could go that was able to still turn. Now, after height, I would do Rollbar. Quickly figure out what this does, drop it all the way down. Take a couple corners. Your car's really gonna tilt left and right. I don't like soft, some people do, but after you try it soft, try it maxed, see how it feels. I like 10-10, that really makes the car really predictable. But if you like it soft, you can be like, all right, you know what, one wasn't too bad, but I need a little more. Do this in increments of 3s, and you'll get where you want to be. Keep it even, and then once you find the spot you really like, but you're like, you know what, I need a little more turning, you can lower this 1 to 2 points. Same thing with the rear. If you feel like, all right, the rear, when I get on it, is still getting out a little bit, you could lower this 1 point and it'll keep the rear tucked in a little better. So corner exit is better. So pretty much Rollbar is, corner entry on the front, corner exit on the rear. So you did your Rollbar. I would skip dampening for now and jump right into natural frequency. This is your suspension constant 100% of the time. So this is turning, braking, everything. I would again try it at your lowest. It's going to be, again, see how the numbers are not even. Keep it even to start with. take it out. It's going to be really responsive. But after that, try it maxed out. Again, keep the numbers even. I know some of the numbers don't go even, but just keep them even for now. And test that out. This higher settings are going to be more predictable all around. The car is going to be flatter, but sometimes it will create understeer running it this stiff. So from max even numbers, I would start backing these down in increments of 20, and keep going down until you feel that the car is in a good spot. You'll know it when you feel it, because if you start going too soft, it starts oversteering, your car starts spinning out. You can't really get on the throttle as quickly as you would like to. I'll say you wind up around 240 or 260. We'll use 260, and you're like, all right, this is pretty good. But you need a little more steering. Now, there's two ways you can achieve this. Once you find a good place, if you start lowering the front in increments of 10, your car will tuck in corners and steer faster. You will get faster steering response with this being lower. But say you like your steering response, but the rear is, too stiff and it's still a little drifty. You'll notice this on Daytona Tri-Oval. Start lowering the rear in increments of 10, and this will keep the rear from kicking out too much. It'll stay more planted going around corners. If you still like how the front is, but you want a little more oversteer, start jacking this up by 10. Your car will start cornering quicker. After you figure out your natural frequency, that's when I would move into dampening. Now, dampening I would do it in sets of front, and I would do it in increments of 5 before going to the rear. So whatever the stock settings are, I would, again, like everything I said in the video, drop it. Just go all the way down, see how it feels. You're probably going to notice that as soon as you hit the brakes, because this is what this affects, braking and accelerating out of a corner, you're going to notice that the front's going to drop real quick, and you're going to be able to tuck into a corner. Sometimes it's too much because it will force you into a spin out. So try it at its lowest setting, then try it at its max. How I like to do this, I like to just start from the max and start going down in points of 5. And keep going until I find a spot I like, and 30 and 40 is a good spot. But 35 was too much. I would just split the difference. Once you have that set, then you can tweak your rear, whatever the rear is at. I would generally just max it out. This is going to give you faster cornering, well, more sensitive cornering, I would say. It'll generate oversteer coming out of a corner, but if that's too much and your car is like a little tail happy, start knocking this down by 5s. Do the same thing. Keep going by 5s. And you're going to find a spot that is like, all right, you know what? I'm hooking up pretty good coming out of corner exit. Not bad. Now, this is a double-edged sword. Basically, less camber angle, you're going to have better braking. Your car is going to stop a lot faster. But your cornering is going to suffer a little bit. So you have to find a happy medium with this. Between braking and cornering. So what I would do is I would do this in increments of 1. Set it 1, 1, take it out, and keep raising this until you're starting to have a weird reaction where your brakes don't feel too good. Something's going to give. Either your rear's going to start kicking out, or your front's going to start braking in a straight line. When you get to, your car's braking in a straight line, that's obviously you got too much camber on the front. Take it back 0.5. If it's still doing it, take it back another 0.5 until you find a sweet spot. For the rear, if your rear, is starting to kick out on braking, or, you're accelerating out of a corner and it's just a little, she's not really putting down the power and the tires are spinning, start taking this down by 5. I rarely ever go above 3 on these, but a lot of times I will have tunes that are like 1.0 and point 0.5. So try it in increments of 1 until you get to that point of where either the front's starting to feel bad under braking or the rear's feeling bad under braking, and then start backpedaling it. Now let's move on to toe. Toe angle is very sensitive. I would zero it out, do a couple corners, get used to how the car feels. And in order to understand what's happening here, try this in increments of 0.10. Try 0.10 out, do a couple laps. It's probably going to feel like it's oversteering. The good thing about, toe out on the front is if you have a car that likes to kick out on you, toe out will help you recover. You'll be able to bring it back around. But then after that, try 0.10 in. And one direction is going to definitely feel better for your car. Which car? It depends what you're driving. I don't know. So toe in, you'll generally brake straighter. I'm not going to get into too much details, but try it in both directions. One direction is going to feel better, and then try it in increments of 10. Eventually, it's going to start feeling worse. Then you can bring it back in increments of 5 to really fine tune where you want it. Toe out on the rear is actually a lot more sensitive than on the front. But again, try it in both directions. You're going to toe out the rear 0.10. It's probably going to not feel too good to wheel users. I use this on controller because a lot of the four-wheel drives understeer, and this helps the rear turn with the car. But like I said, it doesn't always feel too good. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be towing in the rear. But, it's worth a shot. Try it, 0.10 out, and then immediately followed by 0.10 in. One direction is going to feel better, and that's whatever direction feels better, that's the direction you're going to run with. Then start doing it in higher increments. What you're looking for here is toe in the rear is more pronounced on corner entry and exit. So if you're towing out the rear, you're braking into a corner, the rear is going to kick out on you. Good for a car that understeers, bad for everything else. Toe in is going to be more noticeable on corner exit. A lot of cars, if the wheels are straight and they are spinning coming out of a corner, it's just going to push the front, pretty much straight. But if you start towing in, it's going to move with the front in the direction the wheels are trying to go. It also keeps it from kicking out. A lot of times I don't go past 0.30. I have seen some tunes that go past it. I really haven't needed to go past 0.30. I start laying on the throttle and the car will generally go in the direction I want. From here, we will talk about differential settings and how to tune it. I would bring them all down to the lowest it can. This is going to make the car very sensitive to steering inputs, and you're not going to be hooking up too well when you get on it. But regardless, you got to try it. Drop it all, and which one you're going to start with is acceleration sensitivity. After you get used to the car, you see how it drives, max this out. See how it drives after that. This is going to make both tires spin. This is basically a 60 to 40% ratio of power. Doesn't ever do truly 50, but lower settings are better for turning. Higher settings are better when you have higher power and you come out of the corner, you floor it. One tire is going to be spinning, you're going to not really be accelerating as good as you can. Higher settings here will get you that acceleration, though you do need good throttle control because this can easily throw you into a wall. So what I would do here is I would max this and start going down by increments of 10 until you find a manageable position. 30 is a pretty good number for this, but some cars I run 50, 60. Once you have that figured out, you're going to jump to braking sensitivity because these go hand in hand. This is when you're on throttle. This is when you're off throttle and or braking. So now you have this good for coming out of corners. This is going to be your going into the corner. Generally your braking. So as soon as you have this acceleration number set, I would just mirror your braking sensitivity. Go take it out for a spin. It's going to make it very predictable. These do create some understeer, but it's going to make your throttle inputs match your braking inputs. So, if you feel you need more turning than braking, start dropping this down by 10, 5s or 10s, and if you feel like your braking is, you want it to brake straighter, go up by 10. It's as simple as that. You can even go up to max. Some cars need it, like the Porsches, but yeah, that's that. The torque is when you're going around, say, a left corner or whatever corner, your outside tire that's traveling the most distance, this adds more power to it. Most of the times I like this setting, low, but you should try it low and then max to get the feel of how it affects your car, because it affects every car differently. Four-wheel drives generally like higher numbers on these. It can make your car oversteer, but if you have too much of it, it makes the rear slide. So I would just try to start this from low and do it in increments of 10. And then eventually you're going to find a spot that's like, all right, 25 is pretty good. Let me try 35, 35. All right, you know what? I'm not able to control the car. Let me try 30. So do it in increments of 10, then backpedal in increments of 5, and you'll find your sweet spot. Now let's move on to downforce. Downforce, I would run max. Just max it out and start from there. Every car has different arrow. A lot of cars have 200, 300. Race cars have their own. Some of them have just so many variations of downforce. Run at max. What you're looking for here is when you have max downforce, if your car is understeering, ever since you maxed the downforce, it just doesn't feel like it wants to turn anymore, go to your rear downforce. Start dropping this in increments of 50. And you're going to start noticing your car is going to start turning better. But if it feels like it's turning too much and you dropped it by 50, split the difference, bring it back up by 25. It's going to get you close to where you want to be. And then you can do increments of 5 from there on out, say, all right, you brought it back up 25. It's too much. I liked how it felt at, 200, but it was still a little skittish, and start backing it down by 5s. And you'll eventually find a spot you like. But if your car is oversteering too much, like you're going into a corner and it's just turning way too much, drop your front by 50. See how that feels. It's going to start understeering. It's probably going to be more predictable. A lot of wheel users don't use a lot of front downforce because it's too quick for them. Start lowering this in increments of 50 and then backpedal 25 when you find a good spot, and then break it down in increments of 5. That's a really quick way to figure that out. Now, after you have all your suspension and aero done, and the car still is giving you some trouble, maybe you have traction issues, maybe the front just doesn't want to stay on the ground. Your next part of tuning is ballast. Now, on the FCRX7, I'm 5248. If you could drive without ballast and the car is decent, great, leave it. But if you're like, all right, you know what, I wish there was something else I could do to this car, ballast is your friend. Getting these numbers to 50-50 helps out a ton. So I don't ever really put ballast in the middle. I think it's a waste. The game doesn't translate it well, so I need weight in the back. You go all the way to the back. If you drive an MR or RR, like Porsches and stuff, put the weight all the way to the front. Simple, one way or the other. So I'll go here and I'll just start jamming numbers. All right, 51 in the rear is too much. Obviously, you see it right there. I'm trying to get 50-50. Once you get to 50-50, start knocking this down in 5s because you want as little ballast as possible. And what I'm doing here, I'm hitting triangle. I'm trying to see when this starts to change because I want the least amount of ballast possible. All right, now I went to 49. Once you're there, you want to get it back up to 50-50. So start doing it in increments of 1. And look, 1 point got me to 50-50, and I added the least amount of ballast as I could. Some cars take all 200. It depends. Some you can't get 50-50, but use that method to get your ballast to 50-50. This will affect your braking a little bit. It doesn't affect top speed by too much, surprisingly, but it will make your car a hell of a lot more predictable, a lot more balanced, and easier to drive. So that's what you do for ballast. After that, I guess I'll mention the difference between ECU and Power Restrictor. If you look at your power bands here, you have the gray is your torque, the blue is your horsepower. If you look below the box, you see 1100, that's your idle RPM, and then 8651 is your red line. So if you look at the power band here, you can see, all right, I make most of my torque at 7,000 RPM, make most of my power about 8,000 RPM. So if you were a manual driver, you would really want to shift a little after 8,000 RPM. There's no point in dragging it on because your power's starting to go down, you're going to slow down. But when you do power restrictor, it changes your torque band, your torque and your power band. I like power restrictor better because if I'm going to lose power, I definitely want to reinforce it with torque. Torque is pushing power, twisting power. So even, I'll give you an example. Say, let me pick a number here. We're trying to get to 400 horse. We can't go above 400 horse. So we got 397 horsepower and we got 336 torque. Not a bad setup. But let's say we use output adjustment to get, 397 horsepower out of power restrictor, but our torque is less. And if you notice, when we use output adjustment, you look at the PP, it's 713, but if we use power restrictor, it's 716. And the reason behind this is torque. Torque is your pushing power. Even if you're at lower horsepower, higher torque gets the car moving quicker. So I believe power restrictor is a better setup. The downside is when you're lowering your torque band, the car you're going to have a little more throttle control. It is going to change the characteristics of the car. Mid RPMs, you're going to have a ton of power all of a sudden. Whereas if you're trying to keep the feel of the car the same, as you can see, it doesn't really change the power band so much. The car will feel the same, but I'm a firm believer if you got a horsepower cap you're trying to meet, make up the difference with torque. So that's how I feel about that. And I believe that concludes it. I'm not going to get into brake controller. It's pretty much self-explanatory, but this is the numbers and the math I use to do my tunes. So I hope it helps and hope it helps you guys figure out, your tunes in a quick fashion. Once you get used to doing it this way after several times, you really do fly through it because you'll know what to look for. But have at it and have fun.